Nancy Williams had always been cautious about dating. At 40, she'd grown tired of disappointing encounters and broken promises. But after months of loneliness, she decided to give online dating another chance. When she matched with Derek on a popular dating app, his messages seemed genuine enough. After 2 weeks of chatting, they agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. The date was a disaster from the moment they sat down. Derek barely looked up from his phone, answered her questions with one-word responses, and seemed more interested in the sports game playing on the cafe's television than getting to know her. Nancy excused herself after an hour, politely declining his half-hearted suggestion for a second date. Disappointed but not devastated, Nancy drove home through the winding forest road she always took. It was her favorite route, peaceful and scenic, lined with towering pines and thick undergrowth. She'd even pulled over briefly to admire a cluster of unusual purple flowers she'd never noticed before, their petals glistening with what looked like morning dew, despite the evening hour. The next morning started like any other. Nancy brewed her coffee, settled into her home office, and began working on her latest graphic design project. It wasn't until she reached up to adjust her shoulder that she felt it. A strange, uncomfortable sensation, like tiny pinpricks across her skin. Rolling up her sleeve, Nancy gasped. Her shoulder was covered in small, perfectly round holes. They weren't deep, but they were numerous. Dozens of tiny perforations that looked almost deliberate. The skin around each hole was slightly raised and had an odd grayish tint. "What the hell?" she whispered, gently probing the area with her fingertip. The holes didn't hurt, but something about them felt wrong, very wrong. Nancy's first instinct was to assume insect bites. Living near the forest, she was no stranger to mosquitoes, ticks, and other pests. But she'd never seen anything like this. The holes were too uniform, too organized. And when she looked closer, she could swear she saw something dark moving just beneath the surface of her skin. She spent the morning researching online, typing increasingly frantic searches into her browser. Small holes in skin, multiple insect bites shoulder, parasites under skin. The images that came up made her stomach churn, but none matched exactly what she was experiencing. By noon, the holes had grown slightly larger. By 2 o'clock, she could no longer ignore the fact that whatever was happening was getting worse. Nancy hated doctors, the sterile environments, the condescending attitudes, the astronomical bills. But this was beyond her ability to handle alone. Dr. Martinez's office managed to squeeze her in for an emergency appointment that afternoon. Nancy sat in the waiting room, her sleeve pulled down to hide her shoulder, trying to appear calm. But when she finally rolled up her sleeve in the examination room, Dr. Martinez's face went pale. "Mrs. Williams," he said slowly, "I need you to stay very calm. I've never seen anything quite like this before." Nancy's heart raced. "What do you mean you've never seen it? You're a doctor." Dr. Martinez was already reaching for his phone. "I'm going to need to run some tests immediately, and I may need to consult with some specialists." He paused, studying her shoulder more closely. "Can you tell me everywhere you've been in the last few days? Anyone you've been in contact with?" Nancy recounted her boring week. Work, grocery shopping, her disastrous date, the drive home through the forest. When she mentioned the forest road, Dr. Martinez made a note. "Did you touch anything unusual? Any plants, mushrooms, or organic matter?" Nancy's mind flashed to the beautiful purple flowers. "There were some flowers I'd never seen before. I might have brushed against them when I got out of my car." The tests came back inconclusive, but Dr. Martinez had posted photos of Nancy's condition on a medical forum. While they waited, Nancy noticed that the holes had spread slightly down her arm. More concerning, she could no longer feel anything when Dr. Martinez touched the affected area. Her shoulder had gone completely numb. An hour later, Dr. Martinez burst back into the room, his face grim. "Nancy, I just heard back from a colleague in Oregon. He's seen this before." "And?" Nancy's voice was barely a whisper. "It's a rare, flesh-eating virus, transmitted by a plant that's not native to this area. If we don't act immediately, it will continue to spread throughout your body." Nancy felt the room spin. "Are you saying I'm going to die?" "Not if we act now. But Nancy, there's something else. This virus is highly contagious in its active phase. I have to put the building under quarantine until we can get you to a specialized facility." Before Nancy could respond, she heard the sound of multiple car doors slamming outside. Through the window, she saw police cars and what looked like a hazmat team setting up equipment. "Dr. Martinez, what's happening?" "It's protocol for potential biological threats. They're going to transport you to Regional Medical Center, where they have an isolation unit and the specific antibiotics needed to treat this virus." Nancy watched in horror as medical personnel in full protective gear entered the building. The other patients in the waiting room were being evacuated, some looking terrified, others angry at the disruption. "The good news," Dr. Martinez continued, "is that my colleague in Oregon successfully treated his patient. The antibiotics are highly effective, but you'll need to remain in isolation for at least a week while the treatment works." As Nancy was being prepared for transport, one of the hazmat team members explained that they needed to trace her exact movements over the past few days. The contaminated plant would need to be located and destroyed to prevent others from being exposed. "Those purple flowers," Nancy said. "They were about 2 miles north on Forest Service Road 23, near the old wooden bridge." The isolation ward at Regional Medical Center was surprisingly comfortable, though Nancy felt like she was living in a science fiction movie. Medical staff could only enter wearing full protective equipment, and all her meals were delivered through an airlock system. Dr. Sarah Chen, the infectious disease specialist overseeing her care, explained the situation more thoroughly. "The plant you encountered is called Necrosis purpurea. It's native to certain parts of South America, but climate change and global shipping have allowed it to establish itself in new regions. The virus it carries creates those holes as it begins breaking down tissue to spread." "How long before—" Nancy couldn't finish the sentence. "The antibiotics will halt the progression within 48 hours. The damaged tissue will regenerate over the following weeks. You're going to be fine, Nancy." True to Dr. Chen's prediction, the spread stopped within 2 days. The holes began to close, and sensation gradually returned to Nancy's shoulder. By the end of the week, only faint scars remained as evidence of her ordeal. The environmental team had successfully located and destroyed the contaminated plant, along with several others that had begun growing in the same area. They discovered that illegal dumping of exotic plant material near the Forest Service Road had introduced the species to the local ecosystem. A month later, Nancy was back to her normal routine, though she'd developed a much healthier respect for unknown plants. She'd also decided to take a break from dating apps, at least for a while. Her disastrous date with Derek had indirectly saved her life. If she'd taken her usual route home instead of the scenic forest road, someone else might have encountered those deadly flowers first.
As she sat in her favorite coffee shop, Nancy reflected on how quickly her ordinary life had turned into something from a medical thriller. She'd learned that even the most beautiful things in nature could harbor deadly secrets, and that sometimes the worst dates lead to the most important discoveries. The experience had changed her perspective on many things, but most importantly, it had taught her to never ignore her instincts when something seemed wrong. Those mysterious holes had been her body's warning system, and listening to that warning had ultimately saved her life. Nancy pulled out her phone and deleted her dating app profiles. Some adventures, she decided, just weren't worth the risk. What do you think about Nancy's terrifying experience? Have you ever encountered something in nature that seemed too beautiful to be safe? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more spine-chilling stories. We'll see you next time with another tale that proves reality can be stranger than fiction.